somewhere in your city tonight, there is a building sitting quietly in the dark. Maybe it is an office, maybe it is a hospital, or a school, or a hotel. The hallways are empty now. The lights along the corridors have dimmed down to their nighttime level, soft, low, just enough to outline the floor. The elevators are still. The HVAC hums very gently somewhere above the ceiling tiles, barely audible, moving air through the building at a slower, quieter pace than it did during the day. And yet, the building is not unaware. It is being watched over, quietly, steadily, without interruption. There are systems in this building, systems that do not sleep, systems that were designed very carefully to stay awake, to stay present, to hold a kind of slow, patient, attentive watch over every corridor, every room, every mechanical space tucked behind a door that most people never open. Tonight we are going to visit one of those systems. We are going to walk very gently through the world of commercial fire alarm systems, not the dramatic version you might imagine, not alarms blaring and lights flashing. We are going to meet these systems in their quiet state, the state they spend most of their lives in, simply watching, simply waiting, steadily at work, long after everyone else has gone home. So find a comfortable position, let your breathing slow, and let's take a quiet walk inside a building at night. There's a room somewhere in this building, probably near the main lobby, or perhaps near a side entrance, where a metal cabinet is mounted to the wall. It is not large, it is not dramatic. It has a door, usually gray or red, and behind that door are rows of circuit boards, terminal strips, indicator lights, and a small display panel. The room around it might be a little warmer than the hallways. There is often a faint smell of electronics, clean, neutral, the familiar warmth of steady, low-level processing. This is the fire alarm control panel, and this is the brain. Not a loud brain, not an anxious brain, more like the brain of someone who is very good at their job, experienced, calm, careful, sitting quietly at a desk, in a dimly lit room, watching a long list of items on a screen, making sure everything is exactly as it should be. The fire alarm control panel does this all the time, day and night. During the busiest moments of a Tuesday morning and during the stillest hours of a Thursday night, it is here, watching, processing, steady. It receives signals from devices placed all over the building, sensors tucked into ceilings, devices mounted on walls near stairwell doors, equipment connected through wires running through conduit above the ceiling tiles. All of those devices are reporting back to this panel continuously in a language of small electrical signals. And the panel is listening to all of them at once, quietly, without any visible effort. Right now, at this late, quiet hour, the panel is in what you might call its normal state. And its normal state is not silence, it is supervision. Supervision is a word worth sitting with for a moment. In the world of fire alarm systems, supervision means something very specific and very reassuring. It means that the system is not just waiting to notice a fire, it is also watching itself, checking its own wiring, confirming that every device it knows about is still present, still connected, still ready to do its job. If a wire were to develop a fault, if a connection were to fail somewhere out in the building, the panel would know. It would not simply go quiet. It would notice, and it would report, and it would ask for attention. This is one of the quiet strengths of a well-designed fire alarm system. It does not just protect the building from fire, it protects the system itself, making sure that when it is needed, It will be ready. So as you rest tonight, somewhere in the buildings around you, control panels are doing this steady work. Not dramatically, not with any urgency, just watching, confirming, maintaining their gentle, continuous awareness. The indicator lights on the face of the panel are small and orderly. In a healthy system, the normal condition is calm, a steady green light, or a quiet display that shows nothing requiring attention. The panel is not alarmed. It is simply present. Imagine walking up to that panel right now, in the quiet of the building at night. The hallway behind you is dim and empty. Your footsteps are soft on the tile. There is no one else here. The building is at rest, and yet, as you look at this panel, you can sense in a very quiet way that this room is the most attentive place in the building. Everything flows back here. Every ceiling sensor, every device tucked above a door frame, every piece of equipment monitoring the air in a mechanical room somewhere down the hall. They all have a thread, a wire, a pathway that leads back to this panel. The panel knows the building. It has been programmed to understand. Let's leave the control panel room for a moment, not far. Just a few steps down the hallway. The door closes softly behind us, and we are back in the corridor. The floor stretches ahead, tile or carpet, depending on the building, and the ceiling above is a quiet landscape of its own. Ceiling tiles, light fixtures dark for the night, the occasional sprinkler head, an air grill, a small exit sign glowing in red, and here and there, spaced out at careful intervals along the ceiling, small round devices, white or off-white, or a soft gray, not much larger than a smoke alarm you might find at home, and yet connected to something much larger, to the panel we just visited, and through the panel to the whole system. These are the initiating devices. They are the system's senses, the part of the fire alarm system that reaches out into the building and listens for something that should not be there. And right now, in this quiet building, they are simply present, watching, waiting, in the way that only a device that never tires can wait, without impatience, without distraction, without any sense of the hours passing. The most familiar of these devices, the one most people recognize, is the smoke detector. You have probably seen them in many buildings. They are common, and they are common for a reason. Smoke, in many fire situations, arrives before visible flame, before heat builds to dangerous levels, before the situation becomes something that is obvious from across the room. The products of combustion, the tiny particles and gases that rise from something burning, begin moving through the air very early in the process. And a smoke detector, mounted quietly in the ceiling, is designed to notice them. There are different ways a detector can sense smoke, and each one works a little differently. But the underlying idea is the same. Something in the air has changed. Something is present that was not present before, and the detector, patient and attentive, recognizes that change and sends a signal back along the wiring pathway to the control panel. That signal travels quickly. In the quiet of the night, with no competing activity, the panel receives it almost immediately. And then the panel begins doing what it was designed to do: evaluate, categorize, and respond. But in this moment, right now, in this calm building at this late hour, no such signal is being sent. The detectors are simply in their normal supervisory state, monitoring the air, finding it clean, reporting in their quiet electrical way that everything is as it should be. And that is the most common state, the state these devices spend almost all of their time in, just watching. Look up at the ceiling as we walk slowly down this hallway. There is a detector just ahead, round, white, mounted flush against the tile. If you stood beneath it and looked closely, you might see small openings or vents around its edge. Those openings are not decorative. They are how the detector samples the air. Air drifts in through those openings, moves through the sensing chamber inside, and the detector reads whatever is there. In a clean, undisturbed building at night, the air that passes through that chamber is simply air. Cool, still carrying nothing unusual. The detector notes this in its continuous quiet way and continues watching. That gentle, unbroken cycle. Air in, air sampled, nothing found, continue watching. Happens thousands of times each night in detectors placed throughout the building. Most people never think about it. Most people never need to. The system simply does this in the background, without any prompting. It is one of the quieter forms of care that a building can offer. Now, not every room in a building is suited for a smoke detector. This is something the people who design these systems think carefully about. Some spaces, kitchens, laundry areas, certain mechanical or industrial spaces, have conditions in the air that could confuse a smoke detector. Steam from a dishwasher, fine dust from a workshop, exhaust fumes from equipment operating normally during the day. In those environments, a smoke detector might generate what is called a nuisance signal, an alarm triggered not by fire, but by something entirely harmless. A well-designed system accounts for this, and for those spaces, another kind of device is often chosen instead, a heat detector. A heat detector does not sample the air for particles. It does not sense what is in the air at all. Instead, it monitors temperature, the thermal environment of the room, and it responds when that environment changes in a way that suggests something is wrong. Some heat detectors are designed to respond when a fixed temperature threshold is reached, a specific degree at which the detector says, quietly and clearly, that the room has become too warm. Others are designed to respond not to a single temperature level, but to the rate at which the temperature is rising. If the air in the room is climbing faster than it should, the detector notices the speed of that change and responds accordingly. Heat detectors tend to be placed in rooms that are already warm, or dusty, or filled with vapors. A mechanical room, a kitchen, a utility space behind a loading dock. These are rooms that smoke detectors would find difficult, but where a heat detector can work quietly and reliably, measuring the thermal conditions of the space the way a careful hand might test the warmth of a surface. And just like a smoke detector, when a heat detector does sense something, when the temperature tells it that something has changed, it sends its signal back through the wiring to the panel. It joins the conversation. It becomes part of the building's larger awareness. Until then, it simply waits, steady and unhurried in whatever warm, dim room it was placed to watch over. Let's pause here for a moment. Think about the building around us as we stand in this hallway. Above the ceiling tiles, in the space between the finished ceiling and the floor of whatever is above, there are conduits, long, gentle curves of metal or plastic tubing, running in parallel, crossing at junction points, carrying the wiring of this system from one end of the building to the other. The conduits are not visible from here, but they are there, filled with wire that carries low voltage signals, quiet electrical conversations between detectors and the panel flowing back and forth in the background. This is the nervous system of the fire alarm. And in a well-installed system, it is completely supervised. The panel knows the wiring is there. The panel checks it continuously, sending a small monitoring current along the circuit. And if that circuit were ever interrupted, if the wire were damaged or disconnected, the panel would know. The trouble signal would appear on its display. A record would be made. Someone would be notified. The wiring above this ceiling is not just infrastructure. It is a supervised pathway, a monitored connection, part of the system's commitment to being aware of itself all the time. Right now, above this quiet hallway, those wires are carrying nothing unusual. The current flows, the panel confirms, the circuit is intact. Everything is in order. It is worth saying, as we walk further down this corridor, that the detectors on this ceiling were placed here by design. Someone thought carefully about this building, its layout, its occupancies, its air movement patterns, the kinds of activities that happen in each space during the day. They made decisions about which device belongs in which room, how far apart to space them, which areas need smoke detection, and which areas are better served by heat detection. Those decisions are guided by code and by experience, a kind of quiet expertise that most building occupants never think about, but that shapes what the ceiling above them looks like and how well it can protect them. The result of all that careful thinking is this: a ceiling's full of devices that are exactly matched to their environment, not random, not approximate, placed with intention. And now, in the quiet of the night, all of that intention is simply resting here, waiting, maintaining its gentle, continuous watch. There is something very calming about that thought if you let yourself sit with it. All over this building, above the conference rooms and the break room and the server closet and the mechanical space down the hall, there are devices quietly sampling the air, quietly measuring the temperature, quietly confirming that the space they are watching is safe. They do not know what time it is. They do not know that the building is empty, that the last person went home hours ago, that the parking lot outside is dark and still. They simply continue doing what they always do: watching, sensing, reporting, finding nothing, and watching again. There is a kind of patience in that which is very easy to rest beside. The air in this building is quiet tonight. The sensors are finding nothing unusual. The wiring above the ceiling is intact. The panel, back in its room near the lobby, is receiving its steady stream of normal supervisory signals from all of these devices, and noting in its calm and consistent way that everything is fine. The building is safe, and the ceiling knows it. In a little while, we will move to another part of the building, down a stairwell perhaps, or to a doorway near an exit, where a different kind of device waits. A simpler one, in some ways, one that does not sample the air or measure temperature, one that simply waits for a human hand. But for now, let's just walk a little further down this hallway, slowly, quietly, looking up at the ceiling, at the small, round, patient devices spaced out above us in the dimness, watching over the building the way they always do, steadily, gently, without rest. Let's follow the hallway a little further. We have been walking slowly, in no particular hurry, past the quiet ceiling and its patient row of detectors. The building is still around us. The floor is dim. The exit signs glow their steady red above the doors at each end of the corridor, not blinking, not changing, just holding their soft color in the dark, the way they always do, all night, every night, whether anyone is here to see them or not. And now, as we approach one of those doors, a stairwell door, heavy and fire-rated, with a long metal bar across it at waist height, we notice something on the wall just beside it. It is red, not large, about the size of a thick book, mounted on the wall at a comfortable height, easy to reach. It has a simple, clear shape, a handle or a lever or a pull, depending on the model and the era of the building. Its color makes it visible even in low light. Its placement, right here by this door, is not accidental. This is a manual pull station, and it has been standing here quietly since the day this building opened. In a system full of sophisticated sensors, devices that sample the air, measure temperature, analyze the thermal environment of a room, the pull station is something different, something simpler, something that does not need to detect anything on its own because it is not designed to detect. It is designed to receive. A pull station is a device for a person. It exists because the people who think carefully about fire safety understand something important, that the best detection in the world is not always the first to know. Sometimes a person sees something before any sensor does. A flame noticed through a window, smoke drifting under a door, the unmistakable smell of something burning in a room where no detector has yet responded. In those moments, a person needs a way to tell the building, a way to speak directly to the system and say, "Something is wrong. Start the response now." The pull station is that voice. One deliberate action, a pull, a push, a motion that takes only a second, and a signal travels immediately along the wiring back to the control panel. The panel receives it, identifies the location, and begins everything that the system is programmed to do when an alarm is confirmed. It is a simple idea, and simple ideas done well are often the most reliable. Stand here for a moment beside this pull station and look at it. It is not threatening, it is not dramatic in this quiet moment. It is just a red device on a wall, patient, ready, asking nothing of you right now. During the day, hundreds of people may walk past this exact spot without giving it a second glance. It becomes part of the background the way so many important things do. The exit sign above the door, the sprinkler head in the ceiling, the detector a few feet back down the hallway. All of them present, all of them ready, none of them demanding attention. There is something reassuring about that, about the way this building holds all of its protective systems quietly in place, visible if you look, unobtrusive if you don't. The pull station doesn't ask to be noticed. It simply stays here, at this height, in this color, in this location beside this door, because someone decided this was exactly where it needed to be. And that decision was not arbitrary. The placement of a pull station is guided by careful thinking and by code. The idea is that no matter where a person is in this building, they should never have to travel very far to reach one. The distances are limited on purpose. A person moving toward an exit in a hurry, in the kind of moment where clarity is hard and time feels strange, that person should not have to search. The pull station should be there, right there, close to the door they are already moving toward. And so they are placed near exits, near stairwell doors, near the paths that people naturally take when they are leaving. Their height on the wall is also considered low enough to be reachable by most people, consistent enough that someone who has seen one pull station in one building will recognize the next one immediately. There is a kind of quiet generosity in that consistency. The system speaks the same language in every building. The red device by the door means the same thing everywhere. Let's think about what happens when someone uses one. Not in a dramatic way, just gently, step by step, as a way of understanding the system. A person presses or pulls the handle. Inside the device, a contact closes. A small but definite electrical change occurs, a change that the supervised circuit was watching for, in the same way it watches for trouble signals, but in the other direction. Not a fault, a deliberate activation. That change travels along the initiating circuit, through the wiring inside the wall, through the conduit above the ceiling, back toward the control panel. It arrives at the panel almost instantly. The panel reads the signal, identifies which zone or which specific address reported, and transitions from its normal supervisory state into alarm processing. From there, the panel does what it was programmed to do. Notification appliances, which we will visit later in this building, begin their work. The monitoring station somewhere off-site receives a signal. Doors may release. Elevators may return to their designated floors. All of that begins with one simple action, one deliberate motion at a red device on a wall. And then the pull station goes back to waiting, because that is what it always does. That is what it was built for, to wait faithfully for a moment that may never come, in a building where most days end quietly and most nights pass without incident. It is worth pausing here in this stairwell doorway to notice the door itself. Fire-rated doors like this one are part of the building's protective design in their own right. They are heavy for a reason. Their frames are solid. They are meant to slow the movement of heat and smoke, to hold a boundary, to give the building time to keep one corridor from becoming part of another corridor too quickly. During the day, a door like this might be held open, a magnetic hold-open device connected to the fire alarm system allows it to stay open for convenience. People move through it freely, carrying things, talking, not thinking about the door at all. But at night, in a quiet building like this one, the door is simply closed, latched, resting in its frame, and if the fire alarm were ever to activate, that hold-open device would release, and the door would swing gently shut, doing its part, the slow, quiet, mechanical part. In the building's response, everything in this system works together. The detectors watch the air. The pull station waits for a hand. The panel listens to everything, and the doors, heavy and patient, stand ready to do their work if they are called upon. Let's take one more slow look at this hallway before we move on. The pull station is still here on the wall, red, steady, unhurried. Down the hall, the ceiling detectors are still watching. Above the ceiling, the wiring runs its quiet, supervised path back toward the panel. The exit sign above the door holds its soft red glow. The building is perfectly still. There is no alarm tonight. There is no urgency. There is only this, the quiet presence of a system that was designed carefully and deliberately to be here for the moments that most nights never bring. That is what a well-built fire alarm system really is at its heart. Not a dramatic thing, not a system defined by its loudest moments. It is defined by all the quiet hours in between, the long, uneventful stretches of nighttime supervision when everything is working, nothing is wrong, and the building simply rests inside the steady care of its own protection. The pull station by the door is part of that care. It always has been. It will be here tomorrow and the night after that. and for many years beyond, standing at its post, at this height, in this color, beside this door, waiting the way a well-designed system always waits, patiently, quietly, ready. Let's move further into the building, away from the stairwell door, away from the red pull station on the wall, back into the interior of the building where the hallways branch and the rooms sit dark and closed for the night. Our footsteps are very soft here. The air is still. The only light comes from the exit signs at each end of the corridor and from the faint glow of indicator lights on a piece of equipment mounted high on the wall ahead. We'll get to that in a moment. For now, just walk slowly. Notice the ceiling above you. Notice the walls on either side, because them mounted along these walls and along the ceilings of the common areas and the larger rooms beyond these doors, there are devices we have not yet visited. Devices that are right now completely silent. They are silent because everything is fine, but they are there. A fire alarm system has two broad kinds of work to do. The first kind is the work of sensing, gathering information from the building, reading the air, monitoring temperatures, watching for the signal that says something has changed. That is the work of the detectors and the pull stations and all the initiating devices we have been visiting. The second kind of work is the work of telling. When the system has gathered enough information, when the panel has processed what the detectors and devices have reported and determined that an alarm condition exists, it must communicate that to the people in the building, clearly, immediately, in a way that reaches everyone in every part of the building without delay. That is the job of the notification appliances. And right now, in this quiet building, they are doing the other part of their job, the part that most people never think about. They are waiting, resting, mounted in their positions along the walls and ceilings connected through their own supervised circuits back to the panel, ready to do their work the moment they are called upon. They are silent until needed. And in a well-protected building, most nights they are never needed at all. Look up ahead on the wall. There, mounted near the ceiling where it can be seen from most of the hallway, is a white or red device with a horn on one side and a strobe light on the other. It is a combination unit, very common in commercial buildings. The horn is circular, a little like a speaker, designed to produce a loud and unmistakable sound. The strobe is a clear lens over a bright flash element, designed to produce a sharp, repeating pulse of light. In this moment, both are completely inactive. The horn is silent, the strobe is dark. The device is simply mounted here on the wall, receiving its supervisory current from the notification circuit, confirming to the panel that it is present and connected and ready. And that confirmation is happening right now, invisibly, as we stand here looking at it. The panel knows this device is here. The panel knows its circuit is intact. If that circuit were ever to develop a fault, if the wiring were damaged, if the connection were lost, the panel would report it immediately as a trouble condition. The notification circuit is supervised, just like the initiating circuit, just like the wiring above the ceiling. The whole system watches itself. But tonight the circuit is healthy. The device is present. And so it simply waits. There is something quietly beautiful about a notification appliance in its resting state. It is designed for urgency, built to be loud, to be bright, to cut through confusion and reach every person in the building at once. And yet here it is, in the still of the night, holding all of that capacity completely in reserve, not straining against it, not restless, just present. It will be exactly this quiet tomorrow night, and the night after that, and most likely for a very long time, because most buildings on most nights do not need their notification appliances to activate. The detectors find nothing. The pull stations are not touched. The panel remains in its normal supervisory state, and the horns and strobes stay dark and silent, doing their quiet waiting work. That waiting is not nothing. It is, in a way, the whole point. Let's think about what would happen if they were needed, not with any urgency, just gently, as a way of understanding how they fit into the system. When the panel processes an alarm condition, it activates the notification circuits. Electrical current flows out from the panel through the supervised wiring to every notification appliance in the affected zone, or in some systems, throughout the entire building. The appliances receive that current and respond. The horns produce their sound. The strobes begin their pulse. The building, which was completely quiet a moment before, becomes full of signal. And then, when the alarm is silenced, when the situation has been addressed, when the system has been reset, the current stops flowing. The horns go quiet. The strobes go dark. And the appliances return to exactly what they are right now. Waiting, silent, present. The transition from silence to signal and back to silence is part of what these devices are designed to do. They do not get stuck in alarm. They do not linger. They respond when they are called, and they rest when they are not. There is something very orderly about that, very calm. Now, in some buildings, larger ones, or buildings where people sleep, or buildings where the occupants might need more than just a sound and a light to understand what is happening, there are speakers, not just horns, speakers. These are devices capable of carrying a voice, a clear, pre-recorded or live message that tells the occupants not just that something has happened, but what they should do, where to go, which exits to use, whether to evacuate or shelter in place. The kind of specific, calm instruction that can make a very disorienting moment feel a little more manageable. In this quiet building tonight, those speakers, if this building has them, are silent too. Mounted flush in the ceiling or on the wall near the notification horn, they look very much like any other ceiling speaker you might pass, without noticing, unassuming, part of the background. But they are supervised, they are connected, and the system knows exactly where each one is. During the day, in some buildings, these speaker systems may carry background music, or announcements, or other ordinary building communications. But at the level of the fire alarm system, they have a dedicated purpose. A purpose that takes priority over everything else when it is needed. For now, in this stillness, they are simply here. Part of the ceiling, part of the quiet. Let's walk a little further and find one of the larger common spaces in this building. Perhaps a lobby, or a wide corridor near the elevators. A space where the ceiling is a little higher, where the room opens up from the narrowness of the hallway. In spaces like this, notification appliances are often placed at intervals along the walls, sometimes several of them, spaced so that no matter where a person is standing in the room, they can see a strobe and hear a horn clearly. The spacing is deliberate. The placement is calculated. Sound needs to carry. Light needs to reach. A person standing in the far corner of a large room should receive the same clear signal as a person standing directly beneath a device. All of that careful spacing is here in this lobby right now, though you would not know it from looking. The appliances are mounted and still. The room is dark and empty. The polished floor reflects the faint glow of the exit sign near the main entrance doors. It looks like nothing is happening, but the system is here. The notification circuit runs through this room. The panel, back near the lobby in its own quiet space, knows every device in this room by name, by address, by zone, by location. It is monitoring them right now at this very moment as we stand here in the dimness. Everything is in order. Everything is ready. There is a word that comes to mind. Standing in a quiet building like this, surrounded by systems that exist entirely in service of a moment that may never arrive. The word is readiness, not tension, not anxiety, not the kind of readiness that feels like waiting for something bad to happen, more like the readiness of a very calm person who is simply prepared, who has done the work, checked everything, confirmed that the tools are where they should be, and is now resting easily, knowing that if the moment comes, they will be ready to meet it. That is what these notification appliances are doing tonight. They are resting in a state of readiness. The horns are silent because there is nothing to announce. The strobes are dark because there is nothing to illuminate. The speakers are quiet because there is nothing that needs to be said. And all of that silence, every bit of it, is a form of good news. It means the building is safe. It means the detectors have found nothing. It means the long, quiet night is proceeding exactly as it should. The notification appliances are silent until needed, and tonight they are beautifully, peacefully silent. Let's rest here in this lobby for a moment before we move on. The ceiling is high above us. The room is still. Somewhere above the ceiling tiles, the wiring of the notification circuit runs its quiet, supervised path from device to device, from this appliance to the next one, down the hall, all the way back to the panel. The current flows. The panel confirms. The circuit is intact. And the building rests inside all of that quiet readiness, the way a person rests, knowing that everything is as it should be. In a little while, we will move to a different part of the building, perhaps down into the mechanical spaces where other kinds of systems are monitored and supervised, where the wiring runs through larger conduits and the equipment is older and heavier, and the rooms are dimly lit and warm and full of the quiet sounds of machinery doing its slow, steady work. But for now, just rest here, in this lobby, in this stillness, listening to the silence of systems that are ready and resting and watching over the building in their own quiet way. The horns are still, the strobes are dark, and the building is safe. Let's leave the lobby behind, not all at once, just gently, turning away from the dark, open room, moving back toward the corridor and then past it. Past the hallway we have already walked, past the stairwell door with the red pull station beside it, down a different corridor, one that most people in this building never use, a service corridor perhaps, with a different quality to it, narrower, the ceiling a little lower, the walls painted a utilitarian shade of gray or beige rather than the warmer tones of the occupied spaces. At the end of this corridor, there is a door. It is not a dramatic door. It is plain and heavy, and it has a small placard mounted at eye level, something like mechanical room or electrical room, or simply a number, the kind of door that most building occupants walk past 100 times without ever opening. We are going to open it. Inside, the room is dim. A single fluorescent fixture hums very softly overhead, casting a cool, even light over the equipment arranged along the walls and floor. The room smells faintly of metal and warm electronics, and very faintly of something oily. The smell of machinery that runs continuously, day and night, season after season. There is a water pipe running along the near wall. It is painted red. There are electrical panels mounted on the far wall, their doors closed, small indicator lights glowing on a few of them. There are conduits, more conduits than you might expect, running in parallel along the ceiling of this room, some large, some small, some metal, some plastic, turning corners and passing through the walls at carefully drilled openings. And mounted on the wall near the door, almost at eye level, there are two small devices that we have not seen yet on our walk tonight. One of them is monitoring the pipe. The other is monitoring a valve. Let's start with the pipe. The red pipe running along this wall is part of the building's sprinkler system. It is filled with water, clean, pressurized water, held in readiness throughout the building's piping network, all the way out to the sprinkler heads we saw earlier in the ceiling of the hallway above. That water is always there, always present, always under pressure, held back by each individual sprinkler head until conditions call for it to flow. The fire alarm system is connected to this pipe in a quiet but important way. Attached to the pipe, clamped to it, or threaded into a fitting, is a device called a water flow switch. It is not complicated in appearance. It sits against the pipe, small and unobtrusive, with a pair of wires running away from it through a conduit to the fire alarm system. Inside the device, there is a small paddle, or vane, that extends into the pipe. When water flows through the pipe, when the pressure changes and water begins to move, that paddle moves with it. And when the paddle moves, a contact closes, a signal is sent. That signal travels through the wiring back to the fire alarm control panel, where it is treated as an alarm condition. Because water moving in a sprinkler pipe in the middle of the night in an otherwise quiet building means something specific. It means a sprinkler head is activated. It means the suppression system is doing its work. Right now, the paddle in this device is still. The pipe is full and pressurized, but nothing is flowing. The contact is open, and no signal is being sent. And the panel, receiving that steady silence from this device, understands that as good news. Silence from a water flow switch in a healthy system means the sprinklers are charged and ready and undisturbed. Everything is as it should be. Now let's look at the other device, the one monitoring the valve. Somewhere in this piping system, there's a control valve. A valve that, when closed, would shut off the water supply to a section of the sprinkler system. These valves exist for a reason: maintenance, repairs, emergencies that require isolating part of the system. They are important and necessary and entirely legitimate when used correctly. But a closed sprinkler valve is also a vulnerability. If a valve were closed and left that way, accidentally or without proper notification, a section of the building's sprinkler protection would be offline. The pipes would still be there. The sprinkler heads would still be in the ceiling, but there would be no water behind them. And no one walking past would know just by looking. This is exactly the kind of quiet, invisible problem that supervision is designed to catch. Attached to the valve, or to its stem, or to the mechanism that indicates its position, is a tamper switch. Another small device, another pair of wires, another supervised connection back to the fire alarm panel. When the valve is in its correct open position, the tamper switch is in one state. If the valve begins to close, if someone turns the wheel, if the position changes even partially, the switch changes state, and a signal is sent to the panel. Not an alarm signal, something quieter than that. A supervisory signal. The panel receives it and indicates that the sprinkler valve position has changed, that something about the system's readiness deserves attention. Not a fire, not an emergency, just a condition that says something is different here and someone should know. Right now, the valve is open. The tamper switch is undisturbed. The supervisory circuit is quiet. The panel knows the valve is open. The panel knows the water is there. And the system rests, as it always does, in its steady, watchful state. Let's take a slow look around the rest of this mechanical room. The conduits along the ceiling carry wiring for many different systems. Power, communications, controls, and among them the pathways of the fire alarm. They run neatly, supported on hangers at regular intervals, turning corners with careful bends. Inside those conduits, the wires are color-coded, labeled at each end, documented in drawings that are kept somewhere in this building, in a binder or a file cabinet, or a set of as-built drawings rolled up and stored near the panel. Those drawings matter more than they might seem. In a system as interconnected as this one, knowing exactly where each wire goes, which device it connects to, which circuit it belongs to, which zone it serves, is part of what makes the system maintainable over time. A technician who arrives to inspect this system a year from now, or 5 years from now, can follow those drawings and understand everything they need to know. The wiring tells the story of the system if the story is documented correctly. Good wiring practice in a fire alarm system is a form of quiet care for the future. Now let's think about what the panel knows about all of this wiring. Every circuit that runs through this building, every initiating circuit connecting the detectors, every notification circuit connecting the horns and strobes, every supervisory circuit monitoring the sprinkler valves and water flow switches, is continuously monitored by the panel. The panel sends a small current along each circuit, and it watches for that current to return correctly. If a wire breaks, an open fault, the current is interrupted, and the panel knows if 2 wires touch when they should not, a short fault, the current behaves differently, and the panel knows that too. This self-monitoring is one of the things that separates a commercial fire alarm system from a simpler device. It does not just wait for something to happen in the building. It watches its own infrastructure, continuously making sure the pathways are clear and the connections are intact. And right now, in this mechanical room, the wiring is intact. The circuits are healthy. The panel, somewhere above us in its own room near the main entrance, is receiving clean supervisory signals from every circuit that passes through this space. Everything is connected. Everything is whole. Let's sit with that idea for a moment. Underneath this building, in its walls, above its ceilings, through its mechanical spaces, there is a vast and quiet network of wire. Hundreds of feet of it, perhaps thousands in a larger building, running through conduits, through junction boxes, through carefully sealed penetrations in the fire-rated walls, connecting every detector and every pull station and every horn and every tamper switch back to the single, attentive brain of the panel. Most of this wiring will never be seen by anyone other than the technician who installed it and the inspector who verified it. It lives in the hidden parts of the building, behind the walls, above the ceilings, below the floors. doing its work in complete obscurity. And yet it is supervised, watched over, checked continuously by the system it serves. There is something deeply reassuring about infrastructure that takes care of itself this way, that does not rely on someone remembering to check it, that does not go quietly wrong without anyone knowing. The supervision is built in, woven into the design of the system from the beginning, so that the wiring, like every other part of the system, is always accounted for. In the quiet of this mechanical room at this late hour, that feels like a very peaceful thought. The water in the red pipe is still. The valve is open. The wiring in the conduits above the ceiling is intact. The panel knows all of this right now without anyone having to tell it. It has been listening to all of it continuously in the background for as long as the building has been occupied. It will continue listening after we leave this room, and after the last lights in the building go dark, and through the quietest hours of the night. The mechanical room hums very faintly around us. The pipe holds its water. The conduits hold their wire. The indicator lights on the electrical panels across the room glow in their small, steady way. Not urgent, not alarming, just present. This room, like the rest of the building tonight, is doing exactly what it is supposed to do: resting, maintaining, staying ready. In a little while, we will leave this room and move to one of the most important destinations left on our quiet tour, the place where the system reaches beyond the walls of this building entirely, where the signals travel out into the wider world through cables or through the air, to a room full of monitors and quiet activity that never stops. Even at this hour, the central monitoring station. But that is for later. For now, let's just stand here a moment longer in this dim mechanical room, listening to the faint hum of the building's infrastructure, watching the still water in the red pipe, following the conduits along the ceiling with our eyes until they disappear into the wall. The system is here. It is watching. It has been watching all night, and it will keep watching until morning, and long after that. And somewhere above us, in the ceiling tiles and the walls and the quiet corridors of this building, hundreds of feet of supervised wire are carrying their small, steady signals back and forth. The building talking to itself the way it always does, in the deep and patient language of a system that never sleeps. Rest here. Let the building hold its watch. Everything is in order. Let's leave the mechanical room now. Very slowly, the door closes behind us with a soft, heavy sound, the sound of a well-fitted door in a solid frame. And we are back in the service corridor. The ceiling above us is low. The light here is dim. Our footsteps are very quiet on the painted concrete floor. We don't need to go far. There is something we haven't talked about yet, something that sits very quietly at the heart of what makes a fire alarm system trustworthy over the long term, something that most people in this building will never see and never need to think about, and yet which is always here, always present, always tended to, always ready. It has to do with power and with what happens when power goes away. Think for a moment about what this building needs to keep its fire alarm system running. Every circuit needs current. The panel needs power to process its signals and maintain its displays. The notification appliances need power to produce their sound and light. The communication pathways that carry signals to the monitoring station need power to stay open. Every part of this system, from the smallest supervisory circuit to the panel itself, depends on a steady, reliable supply of electrical energy. Most of the time, that energy comes from the building's normal electrical supply, the same power that lights the offices and runs the elevators and keeps the refrigerator in the break room humming quietly through the night. It comes in from the street, through the utility connection, through the main electrical panels in a room not far from where we are standing, and from there it flows to every part of the building. And most of the time, it is completely reliable, steady and uninterrupted, hour after hour, day after day. But not always. Sometimes the power goes out. Not often, not dramatically in most cases. More often it is a quiet thing, a utility interruption somewhere down the line, a storm affecting the grid, a maintenance event that takes the normal supply offline for a few hours. The building goes dark, the HVAC slows, the elevators park at a floor and wait. And in that moment, in the first second of darkness, before anything else has had a chance to respond, the fire alarm system transitions smoothly, automatically, without any human intervention. Because a commercial fire alarm system is not designed to depend on a single source of power. It carries its own. Somewhere in the fire alarm control panel, or in a cabinet very close to it, there are batteries. They are not small batteries. They are purpose-built, sealed, rechargeable cells, connected to the panel through a supervised charging circuit. During normal operation, the panel keeps them charged, slowly, steadily, maintaining them at the correct level the way a careful person tends to something they know they will need someday. The batteries sit there day after day, fully charged, connected to a system that is watching their condition continuously. The panel supervises the batteries the way it supervises everything else. It monitors the charging circuit. It checks the battery voltage. If the batteries were to weaken, if their capacity were to fall below an acceptable level, the panel would generate a trouble signal, a quiet alert that says the backup is not what it should be. Someone should look at this before it becomes a problem, because a battery that is not noticed and not maintained and not replaced when its time comes, that battery is a hidden vulnerability. And the whole philosophy of the system is that hidden vulnerabilities should not exist. Everything should be visible. Everything should be supervised. Everything should be known. So the batteries are known. They are watched. They are cared for. And on the night that the power goes out, they are ready. Imagine that night. It is late. Later than it is now, if that is possible. The building is completely empty. The cleaning crew left an hour ago. The last security check was done. Outside, perhaps there's a storm, or perhaps nothing dramatic at all. Just a quiet fault somewhere on the utility grid. A switch opening somewhere miles away, and then darkness. The building goes dark. The HVAC slows to silence. The exit signs, which have their own backup power, remain glowing. The emergency lighting fixtures scattered through the corridors click on, casting a lower, cooler light than the normal fixtures. Enough to see by, enough to move safely. And the fire alarm panel, without hesitation, without any gap in its awareness, continues. The transfer happens in a fraction of a second. The normal power supply drops away and the battery backup takes its place. The panel remains on. The supervisory circuits remain active. The initiating devices remain connected and monitored. The notification circuits remain ready. The communication pathway to the monitoring station continues to function. The building has lost its power, but it has not lost its protection. This continuity is not accidental. It is designed. The standard that governs commercial fire alarm systems is very specific about backup power. The system must be capable of operating in supervisory mode, watching over the building, monitoring all of its circuits, maintaining all of its connections for a defined period of time on battery power alone. And then, beyond that, it must be capable of operating in full alarm mode, activating all of its notification appliances, sending its signals, doing everything a responding system does for an additional period on top of that. The numbers are specific, and they are chosen with care. Enough time for help to arrive, enough time for the building to be evaluated and the situation addressed, enough time to matter. In a power outage, the system does not simply try to stay on for as long as it can and hope for the best. It is engineered to last. The battery capacity is calculated against the load of the system, against every device, every circuit, every function that needs to be powered and sized accordingly. The backup is not an afterthought. It is part of the design from the beginning. Let's think about the panel in a power outage. It is running on battery power now. Its display is still illuminated. Its indicator lights are still glowing. Somewhere on its display or on one of its indicator lights, there is a notation, a trouble signal, or status indicator that says the normal AC power supply has been lost. The panel knows it is reporting this condition the way it reports every condition that deserves attention. At the monitoring station, which we will visit soon, that signal has been received. Someone there knows that this building's fire alarm system has transitioned to backup power. They are watching. They will continue to watch for as long as the situation persists. The panel, for its part, is not concerned. It is simply doing what it was designed to do, operating on its backup source, maintaining its supervision, keeping the building protected. The batteries do their quiet work. The circuits remain active. The detectors continue sampling the air in the dark hallways above, finding nothing unusual, reporting their clean signals back through the supervised wiring to the panel. The building is dark and quiet and completely protected. There is something very comforting about this if you let yourself feel it. The darkness outside a building, or inside a building during a power outage, can feel like a kind of absence, like the building has lost something important, like it is less itself than it was a moment before. But the fire alarm system does not feel the darkness. It does not notice the lights going off. It does not slow or hesitate or diminish. It simply continues on its own internal reserve of energy, doing every part of its job exactly as it did before. The building may be dark, but it is not unprotected. The batteries hold their charge. The panel holds its watch. The detectors hold their steady, patient attention on the air in every room and corridor. And somewhere deep in the panel's cabinet, those sealed cells are doing the quiet work they were always meant to do, being there when they are needed, the way a reliable thing always is. Now let's think about what happens when the power comes back. It comes back the same way it left, quickly, without ceremony. One moment the backup supply is carrying the load, and the next moment the normal supply is present again. The panel detects the return of AC power and begins recharging the batteries, slowly, carefully, at the correct rate. Not too fast, not in a way that would stress the cells, just steadily, topping them back up to their full capacity. The trouble indication for the power loss clears. The panel returns to its fully normal state. The monitoring station receives the update, and the system settles back into its ordinary rhythm. normal power, full supervision, batteries charged and waiting, everything exactly as it should be, as if nothing happened, as if the whole event, the outage, the transition, the hours on backup power, the return, was simply part of the system's quiet, unremarkable routine, which in a sense it was. Let's walk back toward the main part of the building now, back through the service corridor, back past the stairwell door, back into the wider hallways where the ceiling is higher and the exit signs cast their faint red glow along the floors. The building is exactly as we left it, dark, still, quietly supervised. Somewhere inside the control panel cabinet near the main entrance, the batteries are fully charged. The charging circuit is doing its slow, invisible work. The panel is monitoring every circuit, every device, every connection, and finding everything in order. The system has backup power, and it knows how much it has, and it is tending to it continuously, the way you might tend to something you know is important, even when you don't need it right now. That kind of quiet, ongoing readiness, that patient maintenance of something held in reserve, is one of the most calming things about a well-designed system. It is prepared, not anxious, not strained, just prepared, resting in its readiness, the way the whole building is resting right now, in the deep and quiet hours of the night. The batteries are charged, the circuits are active, the panel is watching, and the building is held gently and completely inside the protection of a system that does not need the lights to be on to do its work. Let that thought settle. Let it be the last thing you hold on to for a moment before we move on to the final parts of our tour, the parts that take us beyond this building entirely, out into the wider network of supervision that watches over buildings like this one all across the city, all through the night. But there is no hurry. The system is here. The power is steady. The batteries are full, and the building is safe. There is one more journey to take tonight. Not a long one, not a difficult one, just a quiet extension of the path we have already been walking. A path that began at the fire alarm control panel, moved through the hallways and the mechanical spaces and the hidden wiring of this building, and now continues outward. Beyond the walls, beyond the parking lot outside, beyond the city blocks and the neighborhoods and the ordinary geography of this particular night. Because the fire alarm system in this building does not end at the building's walls. It reaches further than that. And to understand how, we need to follow a signal. Think back to the control panel for a moment. We visited it at the very beginning of our walk tonight. That quiet metal cabinet near the main entrance with its rows of circuit boards and its softly glowing display and its continuous, patient supervision of everything in the building. We talked about how it watches the initiating devices and the notification circuits and the supervised wiring, how it monitors the batteries and the sprinkler valves and the water flow switches, how it holds the whole building in a kind of steady, attentive awareness. All of that is still happening right now. Back in that room, the panel is doing everything we described. Everything is in order. Everything is being watched. But the panel does something else as well, something that extends its awareness far beyond the building. It communicates. Connected to the fire alarm control panel, through its own dedicated circuit, its own supervised pathway, is a communication interface, a transmitter in the broad sense of the word, a device whose job is to take the signals that the panel generates and carry them out of the building through whatever communication infrastructure is available to a destination somewhere else entirely. That destination is the central monitoring station. The signal may travel in different ways depending on the building and the system, through dedicated telephone lines, through cellular networks, through internet-based pathways, through radio. The specific method matters less than the underlying purpose, which is always the same. The signal leaves this building and arrives somewhere else, somewhere that is staffed and attentive and ready to receive it at any hour of the day or night. Right now, as we stand in this quiet building, that communication pathway is active, not transmitting an alarm. There is no alarm tonight. But the pathway itself is supervised, the way everything in this system is supervised. The panel knows whether the communication link is healthy. If it were to fail, if the pathway were disrupted, if the signal could no longer get through, the panel would report that as a trouble condition. Because a fire alarm system that cannot reach its monitoring station is a system that has lost part of its capability. And that matters. The pathway is healthy tonight. The connection is open. Let's follow the signal outward. It leaves this building through whatever interface carries it, through a cable underground, or invisibly through the air on a cellular frequency, or through the quiet infrastructure of a data network. It travels across the city, or across a greater distance than that, to a building that looks, from the outside, quite ordinary. Inside that building, it is anything but. The central monitoring station is a room, sometimes a large room, sometimes a series of rooms, filled with workstations and monitors, and the quiet, continuous activity of people doing a very particular kind of work. Not dramatic work, not the kind of work that looks urgent from the outside, more like the work of very careful, very attentive people who are used to sitting with information, reading it calmly, and responding to it in the right way. The room is not dark exactly, but it is not brightly lit either. The light is controlled, comfortable for long periods of concentration. The screens glow softly at each workstation. There's a low level of ambient sound, the murmur of equipment, the occasional soft exchange between colleagues, the quiet presence of people who are awake and working while most of the city sleeps. This station receives signals from many buildings, not just this one, perhaps hundreds of buildings or thousands, depending on the size and reach of the monitoring organization. Office buildings and hotels and hospitals and schools and warehouses and apartment complexes. Each one with its own fire alarm system, each one with its own communication pathway leading back to this room. And in this room, all of those pathways come together. Each building that reports to this station is known here, documented. The monitoring operators have records, the address, the contact information, the details of the system, the names of the people to call. When a signal arrives from a building, the operators know immediately which building it is, what kind of signal it is, and what the appropriate response looks like. An alarm signal means one thing. A supervisory signal, like a sprinkler valve tamper, means something else. A trouble signal means something else again. Each category has its own protocol, its own sequence of actions, its own appropriate response. The operators move through these sequences calmly, not with urgency, not with alarm, but with the steady, practiced attention of people who have done this work many times. They know the difference between a signal that requires an immediate call to the fire department and a signal that requires a call to the building's maintenance contact. They know how to read the information in front of them and determine what comes next. And they do this all night, every night, without interruption. Think about what that means for this building we have been walking through tonight. Right now, in this quiet, empty building, something is being watched over that the building itself cannot provide. Because a building, no matter how well its systems are designed, cannot call for help on its own. It can detect, it can process, it can activate its notification appliances, but it cannot pick up a telephone. It cannot speak to a dispatcher. It cannot make the human connections that turn a signal into a response. The monitoring station can. It is the part of the system that bridges the gap between the building's awareness and the wider world's capacity to respond, between the panel's quiet detection and the arrival of people who can help, between the signal and the action. In the middle of the night, in an empty building, that bridge is everything. Let's think about what the monitoring station receives from a building like this one on an ordinary, quiet night. Very little in the most reassuring sense of that phrase. Periodic test signals, perhaps. Routine transmissions that the system is programmed to send at regular intervals, confirming that the communication pathway is still open, that the signal can still get through. These signals arrive at the monitoring station, are logged, and are noted as normal. The pathway is healthy. The system is communicating. Everything is fine. If the AC power were to go out, as we imagined earlier, a trouble signal would arrive at the station. The operators would note it, log it, make the appropriate notifications according to their protocol. Then they would continue watching, waiting to see whether the power returns or the situation develops further. And if everything continues quietly, if the night passes without alarm, without significant supervisory conditions, without anything that requires escalation, then the monitoring station simply watches, logs its test signals, confirms its communication pathways, keeps its steady, undramatic attention on the long list of buildings in its care. Most nights, that is all that happens, and that ordinary, unremarkable, completely calm pattern of monitoring is exactly what a well-protected building looks like from the outside. There is something profoundly calming about imagining that room right now. Somewhere across the city, or further perhaps, a quiet room is lit by the soft glow of workstation monitors. People are sitting at those stations, calm and attentive, holding a gentle watch over hundreds of buildings. Buildings full of sleeping people. Buildings empty of everyone like this one. Buildings where systems are running and circuits are healthy and nothing unusual is happening. All of those buildings are being watched, not intrusively, not constantly in a way that demands attention. Just steadily, quietly, the way the monitoring station always watches, ready to act when action is needed, content to simply observe when everything is calm. From those workstations, the operators can see the status of the systems in their care. They can see which buildings have reported in recently. They can see the history of signals, when the last test transmission arrived, whether any trouble conditions are currently active, whether any buildings are showing anything that deserves a closer look. Most of the time, everything looks calm, because most of the time it is. Now let's return very gently to our building. We followed the signal outward, through the communication pathway, across the distance to the monitoring station, into that quiet room with its softly glowing screens. And now we can follow it back along the same pathway, back through the interface at the panel, back into this building and its familiar hallways and its dark, still rooms. The panel is here. It is on. Its display is quiet and orderly. The supervisory circuits are all reporting normally. The batteries are charged. The sprinkler valve is open. The water flow switch is still. The wiring in the conduits above the ceiling is intact, and the monitoring station, somewhere out there in the wider city, knows all of this. It has received its test signals. It has confirmed the communication pathway. It knows this building is being watched over, not just by its own panel, but by a room full of attentive people who will not go home when the shift ends, because the shift never ends, not at a monitoring station. There is always someone there. That thought, the thought of continuous, unending watch, is one worth resting with. From the moment this fire alarm system was installed and commissioned in this building, it has been watched by the panel, by the monitoring station, by the technicians who inspect it regularly, and the inspectors who verify its operation, and the engineers who designed it to be exactly as reliable as it is. All of that care, all of that attention, all of that quiet professional diligence, it is all present in this building right now, in the deep hours of the night, as invisible and as real as the wiring in the walls. The building does not know it is being watched in the way that a sleeping person does not know they are being cared for. It simply rests. Its systems run. Its circuits carry their small signals. Its panel holds its steady awareness. And somewhere a screen glows softly in a quiet room, and someone is watching, and everything is fine. We are nearly at the end of our walk tonight. There's just a little more to see, just a few more thoughts to settle into, a few more quiet corners of the system to visit before we let the building rest completely and let the night have its full, deep silence. But for now, let the monitoring station stay in your mind for a moment longer. That softly lit room, those calm, attentive people, the gentle flow of signals arriving from buildings all across the city, each one confirming in its quiet electrical way that the systems are healthy, that the circuits are intact, that the buildings are safe all through the night, without interruption, without rest. The signal travels on, and the watch continues. We have walked a long way tonight. Not in distance exactly. The building we have been moving through is not so very large. You could cross it in a few minutes if you were in a hurry. But we have not been in a hurry. We have been moving slowly, the way you move through a place when you are not trying to get anywhere in particular, when the moving itself is the point, and the noticing and the quiet. And we have noticed a great deal, so before the night closes completely, let's walk back through it all, not to review, not to study, just to let it settle, the way things settle when you are almost asleep, and the thoughts in your mind become softer and less distinct and start to feel less like thoughts and more like the gentle awareness of being somewhere calm and safe. Let's walk back through this building one more time. Very slowly, very quietly. Start at the beginning, the front of the building, the main entrance, with its glass doors and its empty lobby beyond. The floor is dark and still. The exit sign above the doors casts its soft red glow downward, touching the floor in a long, faint rectangle of color. And just off the lobby, in its own small room, behind a plain door, the fire alarm control panel is awake. It is always awake. Its display glows softly in the dimness of its room. Its indicator lights are calm and orderly. The normal condition, the green, steady, quiet normal condition, is present. Nothing is asking for attention. Nothing is reporting a concern. The panel is simply here, doing what it always does, holding its gentle and continuous awareness of the whole building. Every circuit in this building leads back to this room. Every detector, every pull station, every horn and strobe and tamper switch and water flow monitor, all of them are connected through their supervised pathways to this panel, and the panel knows all of them. It is listening to all of them right now in the background, the way a very experienced and very calm person listens to a room full of quiet sounds and notices immediately if anything changes. Nothing has changed tonight. Everything is in order. The panel holds its watch, as it always does, in the deep and patient hours of the night. Now let's move down the main corridor. The hallway stretches ahead of us, dim and still. The ceiling tiles are a soft off-white in the low light, and there, spaced at careful intervals along the ceiling, the smoke detectors are present. Round, white, small, each one mounted at exactly the right location, chosen by someone who thought carefully about this building, its air movement, its occupancies, the kinds of spaces on either side of these walls. Each one connected through the wiring above this ceiling to the initiating circuit, which runs back through the conduit, through the walls, all the way to the panel. Right now, the air moving gently through those detectors is clean and undisturbed. The sensing chambers are finding nothing unusual. The signals being sent back to the panel are the quiet, steady signals of a healthy device in a healthy environment. The detectors are watching the air. The air is calm, and the ceiling above this hallway is doing its slow, invisible, continuous work, the work of simply being present and attentive and ready. Further down the corridor, the hallway branches. One direction leads toward the mechanical spaces we visited earlier. The other leads toward the larger common areas, the lobby spaces and conference rooms and wider corridors where the notification appliances are mounted on the walls. Let's go both ways in our minds at the same time. Toward the mechanical room, the red sprinkler pipe, still and pressurized, full of water that is simply waiting. The water flow switch clamped to the pipe, its paddle undisturbed, its contact open, its circuit reporting nothing unusual back to the panel. The tamper switch on the valve, confirming that the valve is open, that the water supply is intact, that the sprinkler system is charged and ready throughout every part of this building. The conduits along the ceiling of that room, carrying their wiring in neat parallel runs, the supervised current flowing through each circuit, the panel confirming moment by moment that every pathway is whole, everything connected, everything intact. And toward the common areas, the notification appliances on the walls, the horn strobe combination units white against the painted wall, mounted at the right height and the right spacing. Their horns are silent. Their strobes are dark. Their circuits are supervised and healthy, reporting their quiet readiness back to the panel. In the larger lobby space, the ceiling is higher and the appliances are spaced further apart, but the principle is the same. Every device known, every device monitored, every device ready to do its work the moment it is called upon. And in the ceiling of that lobby, if this building has them, the speakers are present too. Flush-mounted, unassuming, capable of carrying a clear and calming voice to every corner of the room. Silent now, part of the ceiling, part of the quiet. All of the notification appliances are resting tonight in their beautiful, peaceful, purposeful silence. Silent because everything is fine. Silent because the building is safe. And at the doorways, at the stairwell exits and the corridor doors and the passageways between the sections of this building, the pull stations are waiting, red against the wall, at the right height, in the right places, each one a simple, reliable connection between a human being and the system, a way for a person to speak directly to the panel, to say clearly and immediately that something needs attention. Each one connected through its initiating circuit to the panel, supervised, monitored, known. Right now, none of them have been touched. They are simply present, standing at their posts beside their doors, as they have stood every night since this building opened, waiting for a moment that on most nights, on nearly all nights, never comes. Their waiting is not wasted. Their waiting is exactly the right thing. And beneath all of this, beneath the detectors and the pull stations and the notification appliances and the sprinkler monitors and all the visible pieces of the system, the wiring, hundreds of feet of it, perhaps thousands, running through conduits in the walls and above the ceiling tiles and through the mechanical spaces in the lower levels of this building, carrying its small supervised currents from every device back to the panel, organized and labeled and documented so that a technician who arrives years from now will be able to follow the path and understand the system completely. The wiring is intact tonight. Every circuit is whole. The panel is confirming this right now, continuously, in the background, sending its monitoring current along each pathway and receiving it back, noting that every connection is present and every pathway is clear. The nervous system of this building is healthy. And the batteries, somewhere inside the panel cabinet or very close to it, the backup batteries are charged, fully, quietly charged, tended to by the panel's charging circuit, maintained at the correct level, ready to carry the entire system through an outage without any gap in protection. They have been charged like this for a long time. They will be replaced when their time comes, and new batteries will be charged in their place, and the system will continue exactly as it always has, carrying its own reserve of energy, its own quiet insurance against the night going dark. The batteries are ready. They are always ready. And beyond the walls of this building, across the distance, through the communication pathway that the panel maintains continuously, the monitoring station is awake. That softly lit room with its calm operators and its gently glowing screens. The people there who are watching right now, at this hour, with the same steady attention they bring to every hour of every night, who know this building, who have its records, who will receive its signals and respond to them correctly, whatever those signals turn out to be. Tonight, the signals from this building have been quiet. Test transmissions, arriving at their scheduled intervals, confirming that the pathway is open and the system is communicating. Nothing more than that. The monitoring station has noted each one, logged each one, and continued its watch. The building is in good hands, not just the hands of its own panel, but the hands of people who are awake and attentive and ready to help, somewhere out there in the wider city, in a room that never goes dark. Now let's just stand still for a moment, right here, in the middle of this hallway, in this quiet building, in the deep hours of the night. Look down the corridor in both directions. The exit signs glow at each end, soft, steady, red. The ceiling stretches above us with its patient detectors and its hidden wiring. The walls hold their pull stations and their notification appliances. The mechanical room behind us holds its pipes and its valves and its conduits. The panel back near the entrance holds its watch. The whole system is here. All of it right now, in this moment, working together. Not loudly, not urgently, not in any way that announces itself or demands to be noticed, just quietly, steadily, continuously, the way a well-designed system always works, the way a well-cared-for thing always works, when it has been given the attention it deserves, and the maintenance it needs and the supervision that keeps it whole. This building is not unprotected. This building is watched over. And you, wherever you are right now, whatever building you are resting in tonight, you are watched over too. The buildings we live in and work in and sleep in are full of systems like this one. Quiet systems, patient systems, systems that spend nearly all of their time simply waiting and watching and confirming that everything is as it should be. Most of us move through these buildings every day without thinking about the ceilings above us, or the wiring in the walls, or the small round detectors spaced at careful intervals along the corridors, without noticing the red device by the stairwell door, or the horn strobe unit mounted near the elevator lobby, or the panel in its room near the entrance, holding its steady and unbroken awareness of everything. We don't need to think about these things. That is, in a way, the whole point. The systems are there so that we don't have to think about them, so that we can move through our buildings and do our work and come home at the end of the day and sleep, really sleep, deeply and restfully, without carrying the weight of having to watch over everything ourselves. The building watches, the panel watches, the detectors watch, the monitoring station watches, and we can simply rest. The night is very deep now. The building around us is perfectly still. Not a sound from the mechanical systems, not a footstep in the corridors, not a door opening or closing anywhere. Just the faint, almost imperceptible hum of the building itself. The electrical infrastructure, the HVAC, moving air at its low nighttime rate. The quiet presence of a structure that is resting, but not entirely silent. The way a sleeping body is resting but still breathing, still warm, still alive in its slow and gentle way. The fire alarm system is part of that aliveness. It is the part that never fully sleeps, the part that keeps its eyes open in its own quiet, electrical way, through all the hours that the rest of the building is dark and still, the part that holds the whole building in a steady, caring, continuous awareness, watching for the thing that almost never comes and being ready for it anyway, because readiness is what it was built for. That readiness is a form of care, a form of kindness even. Someone designed this system to protect the people in this building. Someone installed it carefully and tested it and documented it. Someone inspects it regularly and maintains it and replaces the parts that age and charges the batteries that need to be kept charged. Someone monitors the signals that leave this building every night and stays awake so that the people inside it don't have to. All of that care is present in this building right now, invisible and quiet and real. Let the hallway go dark in your mind. Not dramatically, just gently, the way the mind lets things go when sleep is close. The corridor softens, the details blur a little at the edges. The ceiling above becomes a general, comfortable darkness rather than a specific place. But the indicator lights on the panel are still glowing somewhere near the entrance. small and steady and green. And the detectors are still watching up in that comfortable darkness above the ceiling tiles. And the wiring is still carrying its quiet current. And the monitoring station is still awake somewhere in the wider city, watching over this building and hundreds of others just like it. Everything is in order. Everything is being watched. The building is safe and still and held inside the steady, patient, unending care of its own quiet systems. And you can rest now, completely. The building has the watch tonight. It always does.